Heather McDaniel has two core beliefs which shape her belief system on how she conducts herself. One, that every woman deserves to feel powerful, strong, and confident within themselves. And secondarily, she believes that taking care of your health is the best way to give big corporations who profit off of horrible diets the proverbial finger. She's a food and nutrition activist who spent years in a career in sales and marketing before following her passion and pursuing a career in health and fitness. She also believes that food, nutrition, and politics are interconnected. She joined me this week to discuss this philosophy and so much more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. So, yeah, thanks so much for that. But if you're ready, Heather, I'll welcome you to the program. And I'm excited to talk to you about the intersection of food, nutrition, fitness, and politics. So great to see you. And thanks so much for being here this afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So, Heather, I know that you have two core philosophies that you have sort of in your professional and personal lives. So, I'll begin by asking you if you could just share those two core philosophies with our audience this afternoon.
Absolutely. There are two core philosophies that drive my work, and there's one that drives me in my life. In my life, I believe that anything is possible. And for me, it's without that core belief, I would find it very difficult to get out of bed in the morning. In my work, I believe that every woman deserves the opportunity to feel strong, to feel confident and powerful. And I also believe that the best way to rebel against the status quo is to take better care of yourself. And that last belief is really driven by an examination of the systems that we live in. If you look at the systems that benefit from our food choices, the healthcare system, the financial system, and what have you, we have to look at the best ways to take down these systems and make them more equitable. And I really believe that just making a choice as simple as eating better can make a huge difference.
And tell me, how do you think the correlation between food, fitness, and politics intersect and collide?
You know, you can always see the value of a nation based on the policies they produce. In our country, profit is a key motive for a lot of our policies, and it's to keep the economy strong. And that's completely valid. But sometimes that goes against the public good. Take a look at the lobbying efforts done by corporations and the impact that it's had on our long-term health. If you look at, here's a great example, ketchup and our school lunches. Ketchup was considered to be a vegetable because of lobbying efforts. The food pyramid is another example. That's, think of the food pyramid. You have greens on the bottom, dairy, cheeses, all of that fun stuff, and then you work your way up. That guideline that we turn to every day for information was actually heavily influenced by special interests. And excuse me here while I turn that off. Corporations spent about $77 million for that special influence. Um, the food industry and how the industry advertises, especially to children, that's influenced. They're supposed to quote unquote self-regulate, especially when marketing to children, but yet there's nobody there holding their feet to the fire. There's nobody telling them that they've gone too far. There's nobody saying, hey, you know what? We have a problem here because 18% of our kids are obese and they're heading in that direction. And these rates are much higher in Hispanic and Black communities. And again, this is just where these things intersect. It's the influence that companies have over our government, which also influences our decision making.
Now, I just have one follow-up.
Yeah, go for it.
You piqued my interest when you mentioned minority communities and the diversity in those in terms of well, the food choices that they make because of the income that they bring in. So I'm just curious to get your thoughts between wanting to give kids nutritional value in terms of what they're putting in their bodies versus the convenience of what they can afford as parents and as family providers.
Yeah, and this is a situation that so many families are faced with across the board. And what we find is that there's a cap in a family budget, right? And so that's why you go towards cheaper foods. Um, I think one way to fix that and address that is to really look at the true cost of food. So looking at things like, okay, what is the cost of healthcare? Let's say a kid is obese. What is the cost of their healthcare going to be versus the cost of that singular product? When you add the two together, then you're looking at a much more expensive product. And I think that is a way to look at it. Now, is that going to help, an everyday family right now? No, of course not. What a family can do is really try to find resources. There are organizations that are working in that direction to to basically help make food affordable for all families. And that's part of the reason why I got into this work. It's to help move the industry in that direction, as opposed to here's the cheapest option, but yet it's the worst thing for you in the long term.
And I know before you got into this work, you had a career in sales and marketing. So I'm always curious when I interview people, to ask them why it was important for them to make a career shift. You had mentioned part of that in your last answer, but I'm curious if you could expand on why you made the career shift to both food and nutrition uh, now.
Absolutely. It really stemmed from my own fitness journey, which began about 5 or 6 years ago. And I had this very long career in sales and marketing. I was a marketing consultant. I was your typical stressed out entrepreneur. I was overweight. Um, I was getting older, and I just felt completely out of sorts. Now, compare that to somebody who always saw herself as an athlete. I grew up playing soccer. In college, I played rugby. After college, I ran in triathlons. I did all of these things. I've always have been active. I've always considered myself an athlete. And so when you have, one over here and one over here, I didn't really see myself anymore. And so I took my own fitness journey and I dropped 25 pounds, and I've been able to keep it off sustainably. And I got into the best shape of my life. And I felt so good. I think I was about 41 years old at the time. And I wanted everybody to feel as good as I did, because I believe that everybody deserved that. And I also found that in this work, it's helping people empower themselves is the most rewarding thing that I can do. And not only that, but as I learned more about these issues and I learned more about where these different experiences really do intersect, I felt a responsibility to pursue that. It was almost like a purpose-driven work as opposed to just going through the motions.
And I know for you, also, it's important to empower women to be the best version of themselves physically and emotionally. So, can you tell me sort of where you think women have to begin in sort of taking control of their own fitness journey?
Well, I think it's a lot of things, and it really depends on the individual and where they're at now. For some people, I, you know, they might have just fallen off the wagon, so to speak, for a brief period of time, or they had a very consistent routine and life got in the way and they got off of it. Their starting point would be someplace very different from somebody else who has some health issues, or they just really have been sedentary for years and they really haven't done anything. But I think the first step that anybody could take is just that acknowledgement of, I want to feel better and I know I can do and be better. And once you have that, then you could start to take action. And that's kind of like creates the snowball effect.
And for you, with your background in marketing, I'm also curious to get your opinion on how we're marketed to in terms of the food and nutritional value we put into our bodies and the information we can consume. How do you think those are interconnected as well?
Yeah, there's no doubt that they are. And if you think about it this way, we buy based on what influences us, and advertising plays a significant role in that. I joke with my clients about certain things, and I'll give you a few examples in terms of how we're marketed to. One of the jokes that I always have with my clients is around macaroni and cheese. Now, mind you, I love macaroni and cheese. It's not the best thing for you, but we can find a way to justify it, because we look at, we buy the organic version of macaroni and cheese, right? Oh, that's going to be better for us because it's organic. Guess what? Macaroni and cheese is still macaroni and cheese. Even though it's marketed to us as organic, still not the best thing for you. And there are so many examples of that. I recently saw a package in the grocery store, and it was for processed cheese and crackers. There's very little nutritional value in processed cheese and crackers, but on the package label, you see it pretty significant. It has like 5 or 10 grams of protein, and we're driven now. We're talking about protein a lot now. Protein's good for us because it builds muscle and what have you. And so that type of marketing, that type of packaging influences us in a way to think, hey, you know what, since this thing has 5 grams of protein, that's still a good choice, even though it's garbage. You know what I mean? So that's another example. We can look at fitness supplements. These are products that are expensive, and they're telling us things like, hey, guess what? You're going to be stronger. You're going to be faster. You're going to recover faster. And that's not always the case. And one final example is in after workout supplements. We're taught that, and we're told a lot through advertising, that we lose a lot of electrolytes. So we have to have this particular sports drink in order to recover all of those electrolytes, right? Those electrolytes, those sports drinks, have a ton of sugar in them. So you probably just undid the work that you did at the gym by having all of that sugar that's in those sports drinks that you really didn't need. Water is just fine after your after your workout at the gym. There is a place for those drinks, but they're usually for longer activities. So those are just a few examples of how marketing influences us in our everyday purchases.
And tell me, what do you think is your greatest hope for the way that companies and food manufacturers market to us to get better food choices? What are you hoping for in the future or currently from a marketing perspective to help people make better food and nutrition choices?
Yeah, and that's a great question. For me, my greatest hope is that we go back. It's almost like sometimes you have to go backwards to move forwards. And I think this is a great example of that. Going back to supporting small family farms and making it affordable for all families. Um, we talked about this earlier, the big reason why uh, people make choices is because of economics, and we buy based on what we can afford and what fits into our lifestyles. Um, and education is the other hope that I have, and educating the public about how they're being influenced and misled. And it's clear that government isn't going to save us. Government's not going to come to our rescue. So we have to be our own heroes and educate ourselves and save ourselves and make those better choices when we can.
And I know that we're all going through the pandemic now, and
Yes.
making healthier food choices can be difficult, particularly if you're out of a job. So I'm wondering your message to people out there that may be struggling to pay their bills and wanting to make effective food choices that make them healthy, but also realizing uh, the time we're living in. What would be your message to those people?
It is still possible, um, to a certain extent. Obviously, if you're in that position where you're really struggling to just meet the bills, it's about getting resourceful, as much as you possibly can. There are stores that do offer uh, healthier choices, produce that can be inexpensive, um, frozen foods, frozen fruit, frozen vegetables. That's still a better choice than going the entire processed route. So it's really, making one small choice at a time. That's a step up from going, the entire processed food route, and really try to make choices based on nutritional value, as a which I know it can be hard.
Absolutely. And I'm also curious to get your opinion on what do you think is your biggest contribution since getting into the space of food and nutrition? And how do you think your sales and marketing background has helped you to be propelled to success in this industry?
I look at accomplishments, and I look at them in the lens of, they're really not my accomplishments. They are my clients' accomplishments. Um, I see myself as a tour guide, right? I work with my clients. They're the ones that show up. They're the ones that do the hard work every day, and they're the ones that are getting the results. I'm giving them the structure. I'm giving them guidance, but they're the ones that are doing the work. Um, and as far as the sales and marketing background playing a role in that, um, obviously it's a factor in terms of the business side of things and how I communicate professionally. Um, with my clients, I think that background has helped me educate them and guide them, with a keen eye in terms of how to see through the stuff, in terms of how these companies promote themselves.
And when you're not working with clients, so my final question to you is, what do you like to do for fun when you're not working?
Over the last year, I got into photography. That has become a really fun hobby for me. I bought a DSLR camera last year, and I have been enjoying learning it, learning how to use it, learning how to manipulate light, learning how to play with the different settings and whatnot. And I got into wildlife photography, food photography, and I'm starting to get into night photography a little bit. And each area of photography is fun for different reasons, but it forces me to look at things a little bit differently through the lens of a photographer, and seeing little details that I normally wouldn't see just on a walk. For example, seeing the way light hits a leaf in a tree, or seeing a bird sit in a tree a certain way. It's just it's forced me to look at the world a little bit differently.
And Heather, if people want to get involved or contact you directly, how do they do that?
You can go onto my website at apogeofitness.com. It's APOGEO fitness.com.
Fantastic. Heather, I really enjoyed our discussion about food, nutrition, and the intersect of politics and how they're all interconnected. I want to thank you for being here this afternoon and for your time. It's most appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
Fantastic, Heather.